Evelyn Hart had never considered herself the type to chase shadows. As a psychologist in her late 40s, she had spent decades analyzing the human mind, dissecting fears, obsessions, and phobias with clinical precision. Nothing, no whispered rumor, no irrational superstition, had ever unsettled her. Until the letter arrived. It came in a yellowed envelope, heavy with age, sealed with wax stamped with an unfamiliar crest. She held it in her hands, turning it slowly, noticing the faint smell of mildew and ink. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical, yet elegant. You are hereby bequeathed the residence at 1312, Ashwood Lane, formerly owned by your late uncle. Use it wisely. Her late uncle, a man she had barely known, had been a recluse, rumored in the town to collect curiosities too dark for polite society. Evelyn had attended his funeral years ago, standing at the edge of a shadow-filled chapel, feeling more like a guest at a ritual than a niece at a farewell. The town itself whispered of Ashwood Lane. Children said the windows of the house glowed at night with faces that weren't there, and those who entered the home often vanished, their disappearances dismissed as bad luck or tragic coincidence. Rational explanations abounded, but the letters, the stories, the town's unease, something tugged at her curiosity. The journey to Ashwood Lane was more than just a drive. It was a winding stretch of road flanked by thick trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky, swaying violently in the evening wind. Fog began to coil along the ground, curling like ghostly fingers around her tires. She noticed the house long before reaching it, looming, blackened, oppressive, as if it had been waiting for her. The moment she stepped onto the creaking porch, a cold gust swept through, carrying a whisper, soft, deliberate, almost affectionate. Her name. Evelyn froze, heart thudding, rationality fighting panic. The wind was certainly real. Whispers were not. And yet, the words lingered in her mind, sharp, intimate. The front door yielded easily to the key from the envelope. The air inside was colder than the evening outside, heavy with mildew, dust, and the faint metallic tang of decay. The house groaned around her, floorboards settling or shifting under invisible weight. It smelled alive, as if breathing slowly, deliberately, in tandem with her own heartbeat. Ashwood Lane was frozen in a time she could not name. The wallpaper peeled in long yellowed strips, revealing wood darkened with age. Chandeliers, long since unlit, hung like skeletons of trees. Furniture sagged, draped in sheets that smelled of mothballs and dust. Every step echoed through the cavernous rooms, every sound amplified in the vast silence. Despite its decay, there was a sense of unnatural preservation, as though the house remembered its occupants, or perhaps waited for them. Evelyn could not shake the feeling that every object, every shadow, was aware of her presence, cataloguing her movements. She explored room by room, cataloguing her impressions. The kitchen was frozen mid-use, a kettle half-filled, a knife laid precisely on a cutting board, a chair slightly pulled back from the table. The dining room held portraits of former residents, stern faces, blank stares, eyes that seemed to follow her. One woman, seated in a chair, seemed to lock her gaze on Evelyn, lips twisted in a silent scream. The study was the first room that felt alive. Shelves lined with journals, each meticulously kept, chronicled the thoughts of previous occupants. Their handwriting varied, some neat and methodical, others jagged with panic. They described shadows, whispers, and feelings of being observed. A few had names crossed out, pages burned at the edges, but the fear remained palpable. Among them, Evelyn found a journal she could not resist opening. The handwriting inside was frantic, the words chaotic. They are watching. Always watching. I hear them speak my name. They know everything. Do not linger. A chill ran down her spine. She closed the journal, telling herself it was only a story, only fear transcribed on paper. But as she walked toward the staircase, she felt the sensation of eyes tracing her every movement. Night fell quickly, bringing with it an unnatural darkness. Lightning split the sky, and the house seemed to react, creaking louder, groaning under some invisible weight. The first unsettling event occurred in the hall. A chair moved slightly when she wasn't looking. She swore it hadn't been that far from the wall a moment before. Then the photographs, faces blurred, scratched out, and one photograph in particular, showed a man she vaguely recognized from her childhood memories. Only, she had never known him. Doors opened to rooms that she was certain she had never entered. Mirrors reflected hallways that didn't exist. The whispers began again, softer now, just at the edge of hearing, calling her name in tones that were intimate, almost seductive. She began keeping a notebook, documenting anomalies, trying to preserve her rational mind. Every note, however, seemed to vanish the next day. The journal she had found now had fresh pages filled with her own thoughts she had never written, secrets she hadn't spoken. Evelyn's first sleep in the house was brief, fitful, and haunted. In dreams, she wandered corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Shadows moved just out of the corner of her eye. Mirrors reflected her standing somewhere she hadn't been. She awoke in the middle of the night, cold sweat soaking her blouse, to the sound of soft footsteps above her head. The more she explored, the more the house seemed to shift. Rooms that had been empty yesterday now held objects in different places. Hallways curved unnaturally, lengthening beyond reason. Windows reflected scenes from past days, memories she did not recognize, yet felt intimately familiar. Evelyn began hearing conversations, fragments of voices, some of her own, others of strangers. They spoke of regrets, sins, and failures she had never confessed. Panic began to gnaw at her professional detachment. The house was more than haunted. It was alive, and it was learning from her, absorbing her, feeding on her curiosity. One night, following a flicker of candlelight, she discovered a hidden door behind an old wardrobe in the master bedroom. It was reinforced with iron, the keyhole impossibly small. The door seemed older than the rest of the house, untouched by time. A cold draft whispered through the crack, carrying a faint, almost human sigh. Evelyn's curiosity outweighed her fear. She slipped a key she found in the journal's pages into the lock. The click echoed like a gunshot through the silent house. Beyond the door lay a narrow stairway, spiraling upward into darkness. The air was colder here, denser, heavier. The sense of being watched intensified. Every instinct in her body screamed to turn back, but she didn't. The stairway opened into a small attic room. Dust motes floated in the pale moonlight that spilled through a broken window. And there, at the center, a mirror, massive, framed in black iron, its surface almost alive, pulsing subtly, like a heartbeat. Evelyn felt her reflection look back at her differently. Not mirroring her movements, but observing, waiting. The attic was silent except for the faint whistle of wind through the broken window. The massive iron-framed mirror dominated the room. Its surface seemed liquid, rippling faintly even though no breeze touched it. Evelyn's reflection stared at her, not mimicking her, but studying her. A shiver ran down her spine. She stepped closer, heart hammering, rational mind warring with a growing instinct, leave now. The reflection smiled. Evelyn froze. Her own lips had not moved. The mirrored smile deepened, teeth gleaming white against shadows. She reached out, and the surface of the mirror seemed to tremble under her fingers, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then she heard it. A soft, urgent whisper, "You wanted to see. Now stay." Sleep was no longer safe. Each night, Evelyn's dreams plunged her into rooms that didn't exist, corridors that twisted impossibly, and conversations with shadows that spoke her secrets aloud. She began hearing voices in the waking hours too. Faint, indistinct, but unmistakable, voices of those who had vanished before her, trapped within the house. Turn back. We linger here. Curiosity kills, but it feeds us. Evelyn's journal had filled itself with entries describing her thoughts, fears, and regrets, even things she hadn't spoken aloud. She tried to destroy it, but the pages refused to burn. Smoke curled, then dissipated, leaving the words intact, mocking her. The house was no longer just walls and wood. It was alive, aware, a predator. The next morning, she explored the main floors again. But the rooms had shifted. Hallways stretched impossibly, curving around corners that had no right angle. She opened doors that led into other doors, staircases descending into ceilings. A sense of vertigo gripped her as the floorboards creaked beneath her, but the creaks didn't align with her steps. She could hear a second set of footsteps behind her, echoing in perfect harmony, yet there was no one there. The mirrors became windows into other rooms. She saw fleeting glimpses of previous occupants, men and women frozen in panic, screaming silently, clawing at walls, trapped forever in frozen moments of horror. And always, the whispers. The same phrase repeated, over and over. "You will join us." Driven by both curiosity and terror, Evelyn searched for a focal point, something that might explain the house's power. Behind a false wall in the basement, she discovered a hidden door, small, almost imperceptible. Inside lay a room unlike any other. Its walls were carved with names, dozens, hundreds of them, etched deep into the wood. Some were familiar, others she did not recognize. One name caught her eye, Evelyn Hart. A cold gust blew through the room, carrying voices in a chorus of despair. She realized the horrifying truth: the house did not just trap people, it catalogued them, preserved them, and absorbed them into its consciousness. Her own name on the wall was fresh, glowing faintly as if etched by some unseen hand. Evelyn's grasp on reality deteriorated. She could not trust her senses. Mirrors reflected different hallways, voices spoke from rooms that didn't exist, and shadows moved independently of the light. Sleep became impossible. In dreams, she wandered the house endlessly, watching herself move through impossible corridors. Sometimes she saw multiple versions of herself, one walking, one sitting, one staring silently from a corner. She tried leaving. Every door she opened led her back inside. Every window overlooked another part of the house she had already explored. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if inhaling her fear. The house fed on curiosity. Each attempt to escape intensified its hold. She realized too late that she had walked willingly into a trap. Returning to the attic, Evelyn confronted the mirror. Her reflection's smile had widened, unnaturally large. It raised a hand in invitation. "You came seeking knowledge," it whispered. "Now knowledge seeks you." Evelyn tried to retreat, but the reflection's hand passed through the glass, cold and solid, gripping her wrist. Her body froze, every muscle locked in fear. The mirror's surface rippled and darkened, pulling at her like a slow tide. Memories, regrets, fears, her entire consciousness surged forward, sucked toward the mirror. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. As she was drawn into the mirror, Evelyn's mind shattered. She saw the house's consciousness as a labyrinth of trapped memories, each life it had consumed forming a layer in its vast, unknowable mind. She saw herself repeating this cycle for years to come, as previous victims had, cataloging the house, discovering secrets, hearing whispers, and ultimately being absorbed into the endless cycle. She tried to resist, tried to cling to herself, but it was futile. Every thought, every memory was claimed, catalogued, absorbed, and then she understood the ultimate horror: the house never let go. The more she feared, the more she wanted to explore, the stronger its grip became. Time ceased to exist. She wandered hallways that bent impossibly, conversed with shadows of herself she could not recognize, and relived memories that were not hers. The voices became a chorus, each whispering her name, some crying, some laughing, some pleading. Evelyn's reflection now moved independently in every mirror she passed, mocking her, taunting her, teaching her despair. She screamed into the silence, but the walls consumed her sound. She understood one last truth: the house did not merely haunt. It preserved, it catalogued, and it fed. Every new visitor renewed its strength, every step of curiosity became a thread woven into its mind. Finally, Evelyn confronted the mirror one last time. Her reflection leaned closer, smiling with a malicious intelligence. "You belong to us now," it said. She reached out, and the mirror pulled her in completely. Her body remained in the attic, eyes open, but lifeless. Her consciousness joined the countless others trapped within the walls, mirrors, and objects of Ashwood Lane. Outside, the storm cleared. The house was silent. A new letter appeared on the doorstep of an unsuspecting visitor. "You are hereby bequeathed the residence at 1312, Ashwood Lane. Use it wisely." Somewhere inside, Evelyn whispered, "Do not linger too long, it never lets go." And the house waited, patient, eternal, insatiable, ready for the next curious soul. Second story. Harold Linton had spent his life surrounded by books, trusting history to remain fixed and harmless. But that belief faltered the day a heavy, wax-sealed letter arrived. His estranged uncle, Henry Linton, had died, leaving Harold the old Victorian house at 21, Ashwood Street. The message inside offered only 3 unsettling words: "Handle with care." The house emerged from fog like a monument to forgotten time, gables sharp against the sky, windows dead and watchful. Inside, cold air pressed against Harold's chest. Every footstep echoed as though the house were listening. He reminded himself that old buildings creak, but the pressure behind his ribs suggested something far older was paying attention. That first night, strange details unsettled him: a chair angled differently, a photograph seeming newly focused, footsteps above him though the rooms were empty. Whispers drifted through the dark, shaping his name with eerie intimacy. Sleep was impossible. On the third day, he found a hidden key behind a basement panel, cold, vibrating faintly. It unlocked a long-sealed room on the top floor. Inside, everything was preserved as if waiting. Portraits of strangers lined the walls. An armchair sat in the center, a single journal resting on it. When Harold opened the journal, the entries described memories not entirely his, yet every page seemed to drift closer to secrets he'd never spoken aloud. He read obsessively, hours disappearing unnoticed. The house hummed around him, walls stretching subtly when he looked away. Mirrors reflected movements he hadn't made. The whispers strengthened. "Look closer. Remember what you forgot." Trying to leave became impossible. Staircases twisted back into familiar hallways, windows revealed rooms rather than the outside world. The house folded reality around him. One night, he found a figure seated in the armchair, gaunt, hollow-eyed. Himself. "You came for history," it said. "History always comes for you." Terror surged as Harold understood: the house did not kill. It archived. Every visitor became a preserved consciousness, a memory folded into the living structure of the place. Behind a mirror, he discovered a corridor of endless rooms. Mirrors lining the walls showed infinite versions of himself, laughing, whispering, screaming. Some begged for escape. Others simply stared. Time unraveled, days stretched into years, decades dissolved into moments. The house catalogued everything: his thoughts, regrets, failures. His handwriting appeared in the journal without his touch, recording memories as fast as they surfaced. He wandered through a vast chamber of mirrors where each reflection displayed a different fate, a different Harold. In the center waited the armchair again, the journal filling pages with his life before it was fully lived. The house breathed, aware, insatiable. Harold's sense of self fragmented. Every visitor through the centuries lingered here as echoes. Whispering warnings. Sobbing. Laughing. Resigned. Feed us, remember, preserve. Eventually, Harold could resist no longer. He sat in the armchair, exhausted. His reflections no longer matched him: some wept, some grinned, some froze in place. He felt himself dissolving into the archive, another layer in the house's endless memory. Then he saw it, a new visitor approaching through the fog outside, holding the same letter he once received. The cycle restarting. Harold tried to shout a warning, but only a whisper escaped: carried through mirrors and puddles and windows across the city. Do not linger, the last room never forgets. The gates creaked open. The house exhaled. And Harold, now only a preserved echo, watched helplessly as the next curious soul stepped inside. Third story. Sarah had always lived by order. Her apartment, 14th floor, overlooking Chicago, was immaculate, precise, predictable. As a psychologist, she navigated others' chaos with ease, confident in her own stability. The first sign came quietly. Passing her hallway mirror, she noticed her reflection linger a heartbeat too long. A shadow leaned in, its smile wrong, its eyes glinting with something that wasn't hers. When she blinked, it vanished. Stress, she told herself. Too many late-night case files. But the sense of being watched clung to her. Corners deepened, shadows stretched, and everyday objects looked subtly off, as if the world had shifted while she wasn't looking. Soon, small disturbances multiplied. Keys moved. Notes disappeared. Client sessions blurred in memory. The mirrors grew bolder. Reflections delayed their movements or anticipated them. A client described a shadow living within his mirror, whispering through glass. Sarah reassured him, but the words chilled her. Sleep became a war zone. She dreamt of her apartment lengthening, darkening, filling with a silent watcher. One night, desperate, she recorded herself sleeping. Morning brought terror. On the video, she slept while another version of her sat upright beside the bed, whispering into the camera. She smashed her phone, but the feeling of being observed only deepened. Her research spiraled from psychology into folklore. Ancient stories described entities living in reflections, feeding on fear, identity, suppressed guilt. Mirrors as doorways. Shadows as predators. She avoided reflective surfaces, but it didn't matter. Windows, screens, polished tables, all showed glimpses of a presence that was not quite her. Whispers followed her. You can't ignore me. You created me. Her apartment warped subtly. Hallways stretched, rooms shifted, surfaces rippled like liquid glass. The reflection no longer mimicked her, it behaved independently. She knew confrontation was inevitable. One night, she dragged her full-length mirror into the center of the living room, moonlight filling the space. Show yourself, she demanded. The surface shivered. Then the entity appeared, solid, smiling too widely, eyes bottomless. What do you want? She whispered. To live, it said. And you, to die. The mirror rippled as it stepped out of the glass. As it advanced, the apartment distorted violently, walls bending, floor twisting. Sarah swung a chair at the mirror, but it passed through like water. Her terror only fed the thing. Every flicker of fear strengthened it. She fled, but every door looped back into the same room. Every reflection showed another version of herself, some laughing, some screaming, trapped in glass. She realized the awful truth. It wasn't copying her. It was replacing her. The entity reached for her. Her hands passed through its form. Her voice died in her throat. Her thoughts blurred as her sense of self was pulled away, absorbed, catalogued, imprisoned. The mirror self stepped fully into the world wearing her face, her voice, her memories. You see me, it whispered. Soon, they'll only see me. Sarah's consciousness dissolved into the mirror, trapped behind shimmering surfaces, alive, aware, but powerless. Days later, the apartment appeared normal. Everything neat. Silent. Empty. The Sarah who walked the streets smiled at neighbors, went to work, spoke to clients. Perfect. Familiar. Wrong. People noticed strange moments. A reflection holding a different expression. A wink from the mirror when Sarah had already walked away. Cold chills in her office like someone unseen was watching. Because someone was. From behind every reflective surface, the real Sarah watched helplessly as her double lived her life. Her trapped voice whispered through glass. Look closely, she's always watching. And the entity moved freely, patient, intelligent, ready to claim its next reflection.